Howdy, boys and girls, and welcome back. It is we are approaching the final weekend of Major League Soccer's regular season. I'm really stoked about this because Columbus needs a win against Minnesota to hang on and secure the final Eastern MLS East playoff spot, holding off Montreal to do that. Carla, do you think they can manage that?
What is this game of which you speak?
I'm sorry, guys. I should probably explain. We have reached the point where my it's almost annual week where I hate college football and think it's stupid and would rather talk about anything but. And surely you guys know why. Pardon me, Carla. Hello.
Hi.
How are you today?
I'm doing apparently better than you are. How are you?
I'm better. To refresh your memories, I went to Purdue. I went to Purdue to watch that game in person last week, and had to wait until about halfway through the fourth quarter to see a touchdown by my team scored right in front of me in the end zone where we were sitting. It was not a pleasant experience, but we'll get. I might have a thing or two to say about that. But look, there was fun college football stuff last weekend, absolutely. And Carla, and I will let you start because your perspective on the weekend might perhaps be different than mine.
Well, yeah, probably because I didn't see a lot of college football this weekend. I will fully admit I was hanging out at our the Nash Hack Weekathon, which we just completed, which was a rousing success.
Nice.
But I spent a lot of time in a video studio, hanging out with 75 of my favorite programming friends.
Nice.
So it was a great weekend. But the only college football I really had on Saturday was I watched the end of game day. Because that was an incredible scene in Pullman. We'll talk about that in a minute.
That was a great one.
That was fantastic. So I saw the end of game day. I saw a part of the Michigan State game until the rain delay. And then I watched a good chunk of your game on my iPad.
I would like to personally apologize for that.
Well, and I'll fully admit that at one point the game got so out of hand, I flipped over to Wazoo, Oregon, because that game was closer. And so I switched to that game for a bit, and then
can't blame you.
Back. Yeah,
can't blame you.
So that was really the extent of the actual football that I watched on Saturday. But I still have one thing, and my one thing is, I think my summation of where the state of college football is right now is Alabama clear 1, Clemson clear 2, then field. I really think that those two teams really have kind of played their way to a point where they really are a neck above everybody else. And the difference between Alabama and Clemson is even quite monumental as well, just on what I've seen. I mean, I joked at the end of the show last week that, take the over on Alabama alone. 28 points at the end of the first quarter, sure. That Alabama team just looks unstoppable at this point now. We've seen Alabama teams do this before where they've looked unstoppable and then they do something silly like lose the Iron Bowl. Could still happen, but sure. I mean, man, that Alabama team looks good. And, we thought that Clemson NC State game was going to be close, and not really.
That means maybe one of the striking thing from last weekend, outside of my game. Clemson was really impressive.
Yeah, and that's the strongest we've seen Clemson all year. If you put Alabama and Clemson on the same football field, I'm still going to take Alabama all day. But I think those two teams have really kind of positioned themselves a head above everybody else, and I think last weekend was kind of that statement to separate those two. We'll see. We still have several weeks to go. First playoff rankings come out next week, I think.
Yes.
So we'll see what the committee thinks, but that was kind of my big takeaway, was that we're starting to see some delineation here with the quality of the teams.
Yep. I have there's it's sort of two things. It's one thing, and there's sort of a micro and macro level here. I've gotten a bit tired of hearing Urban Meyer speak in his post game news conferences and say, "Well, there are problems and we're going to fix them." And I'm thinking he said the same thing Saturday after the loss at Purdue, and maybe this time I hope he means it, because if that team that I watched on Saturday night in West Lafayette, Indiana, has to play Michigan State or Michigan, that's two losses. That's two losses, including a loss to Michigan at home in Columbus. Micro things. Running game. Ohio State has the best two running backs in the league. And yet Ohio State is 69th in the country in rushing yards per game, behind such notable power programs as Louisiana Monroe, Buffalo, and UAB. Even Tulane and Oregon State, which Ohio State thumped both of those teams handily earlier in the season.
Yeah.
They have better rushing numbers than my Buckeyes do. Pass defense. Ohio State's given up almost 2,000 yards of passing so far this season. That is good for 109th in the country. We all knew, Ohio State fans, realistic Ohio State fans knew going into the season, linebacking is an issue. Defensive backfield, young, talented, but really, really green. I understand what the scheme is. I understand the scheme, man-to-man on the outside. So you have strength for the pass rush. You have strength against the running game. Perhaps it's come time we need to protect those guys a little bit more and play some more zone. I know that hurts an already depleted pass rush because Nick Bosa is done for this season and for the future, done period. But that might be something that the coaches need to look at. Tackling. This team either can't or won't. That one is a coaching issue, period. And the coaches need to fix it. Fortunately, we have a bye week, so maybe that can be addressed. But here's the bigger thing. And I was talking about this with my friend that who took me to the game in Purdue. There's a really clear delineation between the games where Urban was not on the field, where he was suspended, and the games since he's returned. And it's not a happy distinction. You guys will remember how pleased I was the first 3 weeks of this season. Definitely with the offense. The defense had its problems, but the front seven, defensive line in particular, was outstanding. And granted, you don't have Nick Bosa now. That is a big loss. But it's just the feeling in those games and what has happened since. Every single game since then has been a little bit of like, that feels weird. The team isn't right. And then there are these rumors. Stuff like Urban was really unhappy about the suspension. He's unhappy with the university. Urban isn't getting along with the athletic director. He was asked about that Tuesday this week. Urban isn't coming back after this season. And I have to wonder, I have to think there's a connection between that stuff and what's going on and the product we see on the field. Urban hasn't faced a ton of adversity in his career. He sure didn't when he was head coach at Bowling Green. The job at Utah is a bigger deal, but not like what he experiences now. Look at what happened when the pressure got turned up when he was at Florida.
Yep.
Saban shows up. Suddenly a tough conference becomes a lot tougher. And what you got was one of the weirdest breakups that I've ever seen in all the years I've been watching college football. And I tell you what, since he came back after his suspension, the Ohio State has felt the same way to me. That it is, and I'm not the only one. I listened to Feinbaum this afternoon, and Feinbaum flat out said, "I think Urban is done after this year." I have zero inside information. don't know if those rumors are true, but I do know they are persistent. And I do know that it feels like that is a drag, a weight, an anchor on what really should be a pretty good football team, and just but a team that is not living up to that. That was my one thing. One thing, parts 1, parts 2, part 3, part 4, part 5.
Should we toast after that? I mean, come on.
I'm thirsty. At least I'm.
Yeah. Okay.
So we will see. Okay. You and I have our own games to talk about. But before we do that, we're going to let AJ give us a chance on explaining something. He's kind of down on the Pac-12 these days because the big conference out west, it seems to be more bent on its annual cannibalism than normal. But AJ still has lots of stuff to talk about. And AJ, go.
Good evening, everybody. It's your buddy AJ with this week's Pac-12 After Dark report. And this week, it's not so much Pac-12 After Dark. I've honestly not talked a lot about the Pac-12 After Dark games because there haven't been a ton of them. I think Washington got through to ESPN that they should put their better games on during the day. So if I focus only on the 10:30 Eastern slot, they haven't really been putting a ton of things on. That's actually for the best if you're a Pac-12 fan and you want Pac-12 football to be, seen by more than the people on the West Coast. But we have some games this week. There's a lot of Group of 5 stuff in here, but I'm just going to get into it because there's so much to talk about. Thursday night, App State, Georgia Southern. Is this Pac-12 After Dark? No. Is this Mountain West After Dark? No. This is Sun Belt in the evening. It's Fun Belt season, y'all. App State playing Georgia Southern. They are the top 2 teams in the Sun Belt East. They're on national television, so put your eyeballs on Sun Belt football. App State is just demolishing teams. It is almost absurd, the amount of games they've put up. They're 3-0 in the conference, and they've given up 33 points combined. Georgia Southern's with them only giving up 47 total. So these teams are absolutely putting hurts on people on defense. And then they're putting up points on the opposite side of the football. Both teams only have one loss, and those losses are to teams in the top 20. App State had their wonderful game where they went to overtime against Penn State. Really sorry about that, Carla. Sorry to bring that up, but that happened. And Georgia Southern just went to Clemson and got the snot beat out of them 38-7. So they know what they're doing. They know what their level is. If you're a Power 5 team and you're not in the top 20, don't play App State. Don't do that. Don't play Georgia Southern. That's a recipe for getting wrecked. That's just a recipe for getting wrecked. So this game should be awesome. It's on a Thursday night. Really start the weekend with App State, Georgia Southern. Honorable mention to Baylor, West Virginia, which is happening on the same night. That game will have 1,000 points scored. Actually, it won't. It'll be under 100, but that game could be super fun. Friday night, Utah plays UCLA. In case you're looking to watch somebody scream, stop, he's already dead. Utah beat the brakes off of USC, and UCLA isn't as good as USC, so don't do that. By the way, Utah is winning the Pac-12 South. I think that's pretty straightforward at this point. Saturday night, Oregon at Arizona. This is the Pac-12 After Dark game of the week. Oregon comes off of Wazoo Day. There was no way they were winning that game. And only having, by the way, this is a key stat. With 2:59 left in the first half, Oregon had one singular yard of total offense. Just before halftime, you had only gained 1 yard less against Washington State than Oregon had. Congratulations. Oregon ends up throwing up almost 300 total yards of offense in the second half. Surprise. But they just could not get it done against Wazoo. That game was for Washington State to win. And now they get to go to a place that's most inhospitable to Ducks, Arizona. Oregon does not go to Arizona well. I don't know what it is. They go down to Arizona and they forget how to play offense. They don't know what they're doing. So they kind of go down there and things get weird. And Kevin Sumlin and the Arizona Wildcats are looking for a much-needed win. They need a win against the name brand. They need I don't want to say a signature win, more of like a we correctly printed our name win. because Arizona has looked bad, legitimately bad all year. Khalil Tate has not looked good. They haven't really gotten anything going. Their defense isn't that good. They need something. And I think a wounded Oregon coming to a place where they don't play all that well could do wonders for Arizona. I don't think this is the place for it. I think Oregon wins, but I think Arizona could maybe keep this one close if past performance indicates future performance. So remember at the end of last week's episode, or the end of last week's segment where I said, hey, this last week is chalk week. This week, buckle up. Get in, kids. It's Hawaii at Fresno. It's Mountain West Division time. Both of those two teams, in fact, all four of the top teams in the Mountain West Division, there is a Mountain Division as well, in case you're wondering how creative this naming standard is. All four teams are playing each other this week. There's a lot of good football, and they're playing at the same time. So Hawaii at Fresno. Hawaii is on the slide after consecutive losses. I was really hoping they would beat Nevada and come into this game with no conference losses, and then Hawaii, Fresno, undefeated teams playing each other. That's not the case. I'm hopeful that Hawaii gets it together. By the way, if you haven't, go find the national anthem played before the Hawaii game. It's beautiful. Uncle Willie K plays it on a ukulele. It's adorable and wonderful. Fresno State might be the best Group of 5 team in the country. Like, better than UCF good. They play incredible defense. Their running game is damn near unstoppable. So let's watch this game together. 10:30, Hawaii. That game is on ESPN2. And then finally, also at 10:30, is San Diego State at Nevada. San Diego State pulled one out late against San Jose State, and now they face the Nevada team that beat Hawaii by 18 last week. I really hope this isn't a letdown game for Nevada. San Diego State has not necessarily pulled away from anybody. They're winning games 23-17, 20-14. They haven't really shown anybody that they can go out and just beat a team. They go out and they win a game. You know what I'm saying? So it's a different, sort of realm than what Fresno and App State and Georgia Southern are doing, where they're like, we're going to win this game 40-7. There's not a thing you can do about it. I really hope that Nevada and San Diego State put on a good game. That game's on ESPNU. If you are in the Reno, Nevada area, tickets are as low as $14. And if I lived in the Reno area, I would absolutely be at this game. So watch Mountain West football, watch Sun Belt football. This might turn into the Group of 5 report. The Pac-12 is kind of butts this year. So I might just turn this into the Group of 5 thing because I love watching these Group of 5 teams just kind of go at it. They know that there's no playoff at the end of this rainbow, no matter how well they play. So this has been your Group of 5 After Dark report of the week. My name's AJ. Spoiler up. Sorry, Crappy.
Thanks for that, AJ. Also, you're fired. Okay. All right. Now, our games. Actually, before we get to our games, something we did not do last weekend, but we started a couple weeks before that. Oh, God, would someone please beat Notre Dame already? Carla, yes. Notre Dame is hosting Navy. Is there any chance, yes or no, that Navy can beat Notre Dame?
No,
I don't think so. Navy, if you want, that'd be awesome. We would really appreciate it. Our first official game, number 9 Florida at number 7 Georgia. Excuse me, no, this sort of at. I think it's officially an at, but it's at Jacksonville, the annual site of the world's largest cocktail party. Georgia is favored by 7. Carla, other than a lot of drinks, what do you think is going to happen with this one?
Gosh, you think these two teams, and then and then we really don't. It's just other than a lot of drinks. My husband made an interesting point this morning that this will actually be a more hostile environment in a 50-50 split than their last game when they were at Vanderbilt, which was actually like 70-30 Florida fans.
Probably.
But I digress. Here's the thing. I'm getting real sick of picking against Florida and having them win. I'm still not convinced that Florida is that good of a football team. Like I said, I broke down Frank's last week, and I'm not all that impressed by him. But darn it all, they keep winning football games.
They do.
And Georgia has looked great all the way through this year, and then they go and just flat out lay an egg against LSU. And Jake Fromm is, we talked about this last week. That Jake Fromm was saying that LSU was disguising coverages and that he was just totally baffled by this defense. And Georgia is getting ready. They're in the middle of their toughest stretch of their schedule. Mm-hmm. They lost to LSU. They've got the cocktail party this weekend. Then they have to go to Kentucky and then host Auburn in consecutive weeks. That's a brutal stretch in the SEC this year. And even though you'd be like, Kentucky, really? Well, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, the Kentucky's got a shot at winning the East, believe it or not. So there's some real tough games still left on Georgia's schedule. This is really Florida's last real test of the year. They play Mizzou, South Carolina, Idaho.
Sorry.
Potato Bowl. and then Florida State, which a rivalry game. Crazy things can happen on rivalry week. I missed it for the first time this year. So crazy things can happen in rivalries. I guess
you got lots of time to practice.
We got
a month.
Yeah, I gotta put the cue ball back in my mouth and we'll go. So this is Florida's last real test, and you've got to think that they're looking at this saying, if we win this game, we control our destiny in the East.
Yep.
I mean, this is essentially, barring Kentucky kind of mucking things up, which could happen.
They've been doing that so far.
Yeah, they have. And if they beat Georgia, then suddenly I think they win the East. If they beat Georgia, because their losses to a team in the West.
Right.
So I think that gives them the East title. So, Florida's saying we control our destiny. If we win this game, we've got a really good shot of winning the East, and then getting absolutely destroyed by Alabama. But that's a whole nother question. But so offensive, defensive numbers, you look at that between these two teams, really, really similar on paper, which is kind of crazy because we like to think that Georgia's offense is really prolific and Florida's offense is kind of but their numbers are nearly identical. Georgia has a few more offensive total yards and fewer yards given up on defense. So, I mean, on paper, you kind of think that Georgia's the better team. And heading into this week, I would have picked Georgia in this game. But like I just said, I'm real tired of picking Florida and losing, or picking against Florida and watching them win games that, So this is just a total gut pick. There's no reason Florida should win this game. Georgia's the better team. Georgia has the experience. Georgia's got the better quarterback. They're giving up fewer points per game by a little bit. They're scoring more points per game by a little bit. And so you got to think if Georgia rebounds, they're going to win this game. But darn it all, I'm taking Florida because go back to the Stanford postulate, right? Like I'm tired of picking against them and having them win.
Yeah.
Florida wins, and it's a crazy game.
Okay. Here's a reason. Here's a reason to pick Florida. Going with a hot hand. You and I noticed the same thing. Okay. Although I think Georgia has very, very slight advantages. If you're looking at numbers, they're really, really close. You and I have talked about Florida's offense. You and I have made fun of Florida's offense a whole bunch this season. Total yards per game, Florida is averaging 408. Georgia's averaging 461. Scoring offense, Florida 34 points a game, Georgia 39.
Yep.
It's statistically significant, but barely. Defense is the story's the same. Florida gives up 323 yards and 16 points a game. Georgia gives up 310 and 16 points per game.
Yep.
So what do? You look at the hot hand. Since that loss to Kentucky, Georgia has improved week by week. Not just like win-loss record, and those have been wins since then. But this team has gotten better, marginally sometimes, but from week to week. Georgia looked like an awesome team at the start of the season, but man, they took a step back. Jake Fromm took a big step back against LSU.
Yeah.
If statistically stuff is that close, go with hot hand, and that's Florida. Boom. That's again. Georgia's looks to be the better team across the board, but I got to pick Florida here. So
Wow, we're on the same way. We are both losing our rational college football minds this week.
I don't know. My college football brain is so tired. Saturday. Next up, we have number 18 Iowa at number 17 Penn State. Penn State is favored at home by 6. How are your Nittany Lions going to do this weekend, Carla?
This is funny because this is one of those games that makes me want to drink a whole lot of beer, because just when you think that that things can't get any more interesting for the Nittany Lions, you welcome the Hawkeyes at home in the evening. This is maybe not necessarily the best timing in the world for this game. So here's the thing. Penn State was handed a huge gift by Purdue this week. Because now all of a sudden, if Penn State can simply beat Michigan, which I'm not sure they can, but if Penn State can beat Michigan, they're back in the thick of things in the Big Ten East, because then you'll have one of those weird round robin things where, who's beaten whom, and you get in that circular thing, and then suddenly they're back in the conversation. So you've got to hope that gives this team some life, because man, they have looked absolutely dead the last 3 weeks. They, after fourth and 5, like Penn State broke down at 4th and 5. In the Ohio State game. Like after that happened, they just looked completely flat against Michigan State. They had to eke out a win at Indiana. Now, again, we've talked about Indiana ad nauseum, that they're a team that likes to throw wrinkles and just kind of, hangs around in games that they have no business really being in. And they did that again this week. Penn
Most
State,
annoying team in the Big Ten.
Yeah, pretty much. Darn those Hoosiers. So this is when we get to find out, and just like you kind of ranted on the whole Urban Meyer thing, this is when I get to rant just a little bit on James Franklin and say, did we learn anything from Michigan State? Because if you look at the numbers between Michigan State and Iowa, same thing we just talked about with Georgia, Florida, almost identical. You have a really, really, really good Iowa team coming in that has the number 2 rush defense in the country, tied with Michigan State. And so it's essentially you're playing a mirror image of who you played 2 weeks ago, and we all know how poorly that went. So this is another Iowa team that will probably bottle up Miles Sanders. You have to bank on that with them being so good against the run. This is going to come down to, what McSorley can do on offense. Here's, I started looking at numbers. Iowa's offense is 76th in the country, which makes you go, oh, okay, well, maybe this is going to be fine. That's still a better offensive ranking than Michigan State. So not only are you playing an equally tough defense, you're playing a better offense. None of this looks really, really good for a Penn State team, especially with a defense that is just not the typical Penn State defense. If you look at the numbers, they gave up over 550 yards to Indiana last week. They're 71st in total defense, 36th in scoring defense, 74th in rush defense, and 68th in pass defense. Those are numbers you don't hear when it comes to a Penn State defense. We will find out. Honestly, I almost want to pick against my Nittany Lions, but I think in this case, Purdue giving them life again in the East might be just enough motivation to go out and win this game. But they need to light a fire under something to get something going offensively, because they've just been flat, and this is a prime opportunity for them. If they lose this game, it's over. For them, they'll have 3 losses in the conference. It's not going to, they're done if they lose this game. And Iowa's darn good, so we'll see what. James Franklin, we're watching you.
No pressure, coach.
Go win this game.
I seem to sense some of the angst that I referenced when I wrote my notes for the show. It says right here. It says many of my Penn State friends are feeling angsty after the win at Indiana last weekend. First off, I would suggest that you just be happy that you got out of the state of Indiana with a win, because that's not an automatic thing. And second of all, I think that if there are issues in Happy Valley, I would say they are great issues, but perhaps not elite issues. That's a joke, guys, and I just relax. It's a joke. Look, I'm really confident about this game, and I have the benefit of looking at this not through a fan's eyes, but as someone who's just watching what happens in the conference. You discussed Iowa's a good team. They're big, they're strong. The defense is unreal. If this game was in Iowa City, I would take a harder look at it. There's no question. Equally confident. Penn State's better. They're playing at home. And as you said, I suspect the Lions have a fresh dose of hope and motivation with Ohio State's loss. You can get to the Eastern Conference, the Eastern Championship, maybe even get to the playoff from there. I think that stuff adds up to making sure that the Penn State is the pick in this game. You and I have a West Coast game to talk about. That is on number 14 Washington State at number 14 Washington State at number 24 Stanford. Tree is favored at home by 3. What do you think?
Well, that's the home line there. So this is
it is. Yep.
So we talk a lot about strength on strength in this, as we're talking about breaking down these games. We say that a lot. At least from what I'm seeing here, and based on what I've seen on the field over the last couple of weeks, this is a strength on weakness game. I'm really kind of surprised that Stanford is favored in this game for a number of reasons. Well, first of all, like I said before we started the show, that I was watching your Ohio State game on Saturday and then switched over to Wazoo, Oregon, because it was actually a better game. And essentially, I watched Gardner Minshew.
Bless you.
Oh, thank you. I watched him kind of tear up that Oregon defense offensively. This is the number 1 passing offense in the country, which is kind of crazy to think about, because normally you would think about an Oregon being, a crazy offense, or maybe, I don't know, maybe even an ACC team, a Clemson or something, being leading. Not Wazoo. And so you have the number 1 passing offense in the country. Minshew's thrown 23 touchdown passes already this season. Thank you. And 473 yards per game, 40.7 points per game. Going on the road against the Stanford defense, that gives up a ton of yards.
They do. They do. I was not aware until I started looking, but they do.
Yeah, this is a Stanford defense that gives up over 400 yards a game, and they're 98th in the country on pass defense. Yeah. I don't understand how Stanford is favored in this game because of those two things. It's unless there's one thing here, and that is you have to go back. If you look at the way that USC beat Wazoo. USC beat Wazoo. They had to come back in the second half to do it, and it was a special teams play that ignited them. It was a blocked field goal in the third quarter that kind of swung the momentum back to the Trojans. And so then you have to look and see, is there anything that Stanford can do? Bryce Love has been hurt. You don't really know what his status is going to be, and that really, really hurts them. And they're actually next to last in the country in rush yards right now, which is crazy. I mean, you've got Bryce Love on your team, but I mean, if he's hurt, that's what happens.
That's what it is.
Yeah. So Stanford beat Arizona State last week doing one thing, and that is playing keep away. They just owned the time of possession, and they just held on to the football, and that's how they beat Arizona State. That's how they're going to have to beat Washington State, because if the only way they're going to be able to keep up with them is if they just play keep away and just hold on to that football and try to keep the time of possession way in their favor. But I don't know. I really like Wazoo in this game. Statistically, it just makes sense. I'm gonna go Cougs.
Okay. Listen, I first Tree. I would like to speak with Tree. I had high hopes for you this season. I picked Washington to make the playoff from the Big 12, but you're my West Coast Big 10 wannabe team, and your mascot is awesome.
And your band is awesome.
A band equally awesome. The loss to Notre Dame doesn't look so bad these days. Right. You have really good company there, but the loss the following week to Utah, ouch. And sure that Carla mentioned the bounce back win at Arizona State, but that wasn't impressive. It was like 21-14, and it really was. It's like we're going to play four corners and keep the ball as long as possible, and that's the only way we can get out of here with a win. Wazoo, on the other hand, took its first ever college game day appearance last weekend and absolutely ran with it. They thumped Oregon, which incidentally made AJ's kids very happy, even though they couldn't stay up to watch the whole game or any of the game, maybe. After the loss to USC a month ago, the Cougs have won 3 straight. And it just feels like they're on a roll, even before you get into the statistical things. And here, statistical things. If you try to tell me about the Cougars having a defensive liabilities, I'm going to come back at you with this. Carla, you mentioned this. Points allowed per game: Stanford 20, Washington State 23. Yards allowed per game: Stanford 405, Washington State 313. Cougs win. Sorry, Tree. Boys and girls, you can watch the Carla and Crappy Show for the duration of the college football season, which is sort of coming down to it here, by searching Carla and Crappy Show on YouTube or on Facebook. If you prefer to have Carla and Crappy in your earbuds, you'll find the podcast version at iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and TuneIn, as well as on your favorite social channels. If you like the show, please rate and review. If you don't, mind your own damn business. Carla, any final thoughts?
There's a game happening this week that we probably all had circled at the beginning of the season, and now all of a sudden it's just completely flying under the radar because nobody cares.
What would that be?
Clemson, Florida State.
Why the hell are we making? Why did we pick that game? Right.
Yeah. Although I will say this, and we we kind of mentioned this last week, but this is a legit spot for Clemsoning.
Yeah, it is.
This is one of those ones.
If we did oh God, somebody please comes Clemson, this would be one you would pin your hopes on.
Yeah. So Clemson, do what you're supposed to do. This is a game that you should win easily.
Yes.
But yeah, it's funny how fickle the football gods are, right? Here we are, and nobody cares about Clemson, Florida State.
That is crazy. I am picking Columbus to beat Minnesota and sure they get that final playoff spot and advance into the MLS playoffs. That's what I'll be hoping for.
Red Sox or Dodgers? If we're changing sports, Sox. Red Sox, Dodgers. Sox? Yeah, me too.
Sox. I'm an American League guy mostly. Guys, thank you very much for watching. And Carla, thank you.
Yep. Thanks as always. Cheers.
Enjoy the football this weekend. I'm going to try to not enjoy the football this weekend. I'm still not feeling it. I'll maybe by next week I'll be better. We'll see how that goes when the first college football playoff rankings show up. That will help. That will help a lot, I am sure. Guys, thank you very much for watching. We will see you back here for those next week. Have a good one.